How's everybody doing today? Welcome into another episode of On the Wire with King of the Hill Sports. I'm Matt Mods, and today we will be looking ahead to Week 10 of the NFL fantasy football season. We had a lot of big performances in Week 9. We also had a lot of big injuries in Week 9. Let's take a look at how our teams did. Let's get a recap of what happened last week. So we won in 2 out of my 3 leagues this week. We are 8-1 in 2 of my leagues, including my most expensive league. My biggest money league, we are 8-1, and my cheapest league, we are 8-1. But the one that I care about the most, that's where I lost. We're now 6-3. The issue being, I lost Stephon Diggs due to injury, and Deontay Johnson getting traded to the Ravens, and also having Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., who didn't really have to do much apparently, and really screwed me over this week. Anyway, let's get into it. This is Who Is on the Wire, headed into week number 10. Let's start with quarterbacks. Not too much to be said here with quarterbacks. You're going to need streaming options. Like I said before, I have Kyler Murray in one of my leagues. He's on bye next week, so I might look ahead to next week already, even though I do have other needs. But Russell Wilson might be the best option for me. He's playing Washington this week, who is actually better defensively than you would think. A lot better defensively than last year. But in week 11, when I would need him, he plays Baltimore. As a Ravens fan, I don't want to start somebody against them, but you can't deny that that's a good matchup. Russell Wilson has some great matchups coming up. Honestly, if you need a streamer, he's a good add for the next several weeks moving forward. Also, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford with his weapons, he's so back. Puka Nacua got ejected. He's still at 18 points this week. 34 passing attempts, 44 passing attempts. With Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both getting healthier and healthier every week, he's only going to pass more. Miami, New England, Philly, New Orleans, I'm not worried about any of these teams. Matthew Stafford, also another good streaming option going forward at quarterback. Running backs has been super thin all season long, really. A couple of guys I would want to look at this week. Number one being Cam Akers, especially if you have Aaron Jones. It seems like Cam Akers has 100% taken over the backup running back role for the Minnesota Vikings. Ty Chandler has 0 touches over the last 2 weeks. Ty Chandler has not touched the ball. In week 8, Cam Akers didn't touch the ball, but this week he had 8 touches, over 50 yards. He's not going to eat into Aaron Jones' productivity that much. I think he's purely a backup unless Aaron Jones gets injured, but he's a solid backup. Also, Trey Benson, Arizona. James Conner, fun fact, has never played a full season. He's always missed at least 1 game due to injury. He has not missed that game yet this year. Trey Benson last week, 8 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown, 1 catch for 18 yards, 12.5 points. Now, like I said, Arizona ran for over 200 yards against Chicago. They didn't need to pass the ball at all, which is what screwed me over in my one league where I lost. Because Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. stack combined for like 8 points combined, because all of their running backs had 12.5 plus points. Trey Benson's play has been a little bit sporadic, but if James Conner were to go down, I think he would take over a much larger role. And James Conner has been getting little nicks here and there. I think the last 2 weeks he's sat out at least a few plays, like picking up little knocks. Those little knocks are going to add up, and eventually Trey Benson's going to have his time. We'll start off with the man right at the top, Jauan Jennings. He hasn't played since week 6 with his own injury, but we know that with him back, he would be a solid option simply because Brandon Ayuk is out. Everybody on San Fran is a little knocked up. I feel like everybody on that receiving core has a questionable tag next to their name. And especially this week, that Tampa Bay pass D is pretty stinky. And Jauan Jennings, without Brandon Ayuk in the lineup, always seems to smash. Look back at week 3. So I think Jauan Jennings will be a solid start if he's playing, especially this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, 2 guys I feel like we have to talk about who I don't really want to, nor do I plan on adding. are Mason Tipton and Cedric Wilson. Mason Tipton had 0 catches on 3 targets last week. Cedric Wilson had 2 catches on 3 targets this week. Both of them had 3 targets, and that's the most out of all of their wide receivers. They were tied among wide receivers on the Saints with 3 targets apiece. I mean, I think of the two of them, Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill are the 2 top receiving options on that team. See tight end section coming up next. But yeah, Taysom Hill had 5 targets. Alvin Kamara had 9. There's not much to love about them besides the fact that they're going to be on the field and get opportunity. But I don't think you should start them unless you're absolutely desperate. Now let's talk about somebody who I brought up last week, and I hope you listened, who I might be considering picking up myself this week. You know, I don't always take my own advice. Sometimes I do. See Cedric Tillman, who will be coming up. But Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, 4 straight weeks with a touchdown now, after not playing for the first 5. With DeAndre Hopkins gone now, his 2 biggest weeks of the season broke 10 points each week. His targets have gone up every week since week 6 when he made his debut. 2, 4, 4, 6, a touchdown every week. 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown this week. Hey, keep it rolling. I feel like at this point you are also a little bit afraid of Will Levis coming back because Mason Rudolph has looked serviceable. I don't want to say he looks good, but he's been a serviceable quarterback. He's been able to get the ball to Calvin Ridley and Westbrook-Ikhine, who have both taken pretty nice leaps since DeAndre Hopkins got traded. Was DeAndre Hopkins the problem? A couple other mentions here, not on the page. Cedric Tillman. I've been talking about Cedric Tillman for weeks now. The first week that Deshaun Watson got injured, I said pick up Cedric Tillman. Somehow, Cedric Tillman is still available in over 50% of leagues on ESPN, and he's available in even more than that on Yahoo. Now, is that just how many leagues exist that are full of bots, that people create leagues and then nobody in them plays fantasy football? Because that should be the only reason why Cedric Tillman still isn't owned at this point. Through 3 weeks since Deshaun Watson got injured, he has 32 targets and 21 catches, 3 touchdowns. What are you doing? If you're in a league and Cedric Tillman isn't owned, that's on you. That's absolutely on you. He should be owned in 80% of leagues at this point, not like 45% or whatever it is. I mean, come on. And one more guy who I also already added, who I feel like I should say something. Today is trade deadline day, by the way. Happy trade deadline day. Happy election day, I guess. But Mike Williams. I added Mike Williams solely for the fact that I hope he gets traded somewhere that could use him. Like Tampa Bay, is that you don't need to add Ryan Miller or Raheem Jarrett. I think Mike Williams might be better than Ryan Miller or Raheem Jarrett right now. All right, now headed on over to tight ends. Add Mike Gesicki. Add. Don't think about it. Just add him. Especially with when T. Higgins doesn't play, Mike Gesicki pops off. T. Higgins might also get traded today, another thing to keep an eye out for on the trade deadline. But Mike Gesicki, last 2 weeks, 14 targets, 12 catches for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Eric All Jr., who is somebody I mentioned a lot earlier in the season, tore his ACL. So now there is not even any competition at tight end. Add Mike Gesicki. He popped off the last 2 weeks. He probably still will moving forward. Also add someone else who I picked up. I've been very proactive recently on these ads that I think are going to work out, but Taysom Hill I picked up last week. This past week, both of the Saints' backup running backs were injured, Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller. All those injuries, all those Saints wide receivers, which led to Taysom Hill having 11 total touches for 60 yards and a touchdown. After Alvin Kamara's 9 targets, Taysom had 5, which was the second most on the team. I feel like that's going to keep up. 4 catches for 40 yards, 5 carries for 20 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Taysom Hill's really can do it all, and with all of the injuries across all of the positions on the Saints, I think they're going to lean on him a lot more coming up. We're going to end on a look at my team in my main league, where I'm 6-3. Cedric Tillman on bye this week. Romeo Doubs and Tucker Kraft on bye this week. I may be forced to start Deontay Johnson on Thursday night. Hopefully he could have a DeAndre Hopkins-like game in his second game for Baltimore. But that first game on the Ravens, I think he played 16 total snaps and didn't have a catch. So hopefully he picked up the offense. Honestly, I might start Taysom Hill at flex this week instead of Deontay Johnson. I'm in a rough spot this week. I have a bunch of waiver ads in. I started 6-2, and I'm honestly worried about the playoffs in this league, which is saying a lot. So that is who is on the wire, and we are on the way to week number 10 in the fantasy football season. Thanks for listening. I'm Matt Mods. This is King of the Hill Sports, and we are signing out.